In a conversation with John Ratzenberger, he pointed to a light fixture and said to me, "Dan, do you know what scares me? In 10 years, nobody's going to be able to fix that." You know, his fears have some ground in reality. A few years back, I was a salesman in the technical writing business. One of my customers manufactured diesel engines. They called me into a meeting to talk about writing a manual for a new engine. Now, when I sat down with them, they said, "Dan, we don't want a sales pitch. We called you here just to tell you that we have a new project. What we want from you is to come back with a writer who is over 45 and understands hydraulics and electronics." This was the strangest request I ever had. I asked them with a chuckle, "Why 45? They responded, "Because nobody under 40 has a clue about how to make or fix things." Now that was from engineers of a leading truck and engine manufacturer. Now this proves Mr. Ratzenberger's theory is correct. It's time to encourage young people to get into the trades once again, to learn how to make and fix things. Here's John Ratzenberger doing just that. Enjoy the presentation.
Well, yeah, I'm going to hand me the pig. Yeah, I just thought I'd prove that until anybody says, "Wait a minute, he's not handing me the pig." And yeah, P.T. Flea, that's my favorite one, P.T. Flea, because he's so avaricious. He'd sell his grandmother for $5. You know, he's the kind of person that gets up in the morning and just wants to make money. He doesn't care who gets in the way. And it always makes me laugh when you meet people like that in real life. Thank you, Ron, for inviting me here to all these, and thank you for getting up so early. You know, that's tough for a college student. I know. I think I was in college once. You know, it was during the '60s. That's why I say I think. Yeah, I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut's well, it was known as a factory town. A lot of factories. We built everything in Bridgeport. We built, ships and cars and the little bead chain from the light bulbs and desk lamps and sewing machines. We built everything. So consequently, I grew up in an era that I was surrounded by people who know how to do things. It's probably very similar here, any of you who come or live near farming communities, because in a farming community, you have to know a lot of stuff. You really do have to know a lot of things, a lot of different things. And that's the beauty of, for me, living on the seashore. So I was familiar with boats and everything that had to do with boats and navigation and all that. And so you grow up being capable. And more importantly, because you're around machines and tools and doing things all the time, you grow up with common sense. I remember there's a neighbor of mine was out cutting the lawn. See, back then we had chores too. I don't know if you still have those. See, do you have those growing up? Chores that you had to do before you were allowed to do anything else? No? Well, we had chores back then. So Saturday, here I am Saturday, cutting my lawn, and with one of those push mowers. There was no motor on it. You had to actually push it and pull it, and every now and then clear the grass out of it. And right across the street was my neighbor, Frank Buchanan, and he was working on his daughter Cindy's tricycle. And so I'm watching, and he's putting wooden blocks on the pedals. And I said, "What are you doing, Frank?" He says, "Well, making it so Cindy's feet can reach the pedals." I said, "Great." So I continued mowing the lawn, and pretty much all morning, he was out there. He was cutting and sanding and shaving and drilling and countersinking the bolts and, trimming the excess off and attaching rubber strips onto the blocks of wood so her feet could reach the pedals. And then John Ritzel, this is a fellow who kind of worked at the shipyard at the end of our street, came by and he's got a pipe. He's just standing there for a good 15 or 20 minutes looking at Frank doing all this, and finally says, "What are you doing, Frank?" Frank looks up, and I remember I'm watching this whole thing, and it's one of my fondest memories. He said, Frank said, "Well, I put wooden blocks on the pedals so Cindy's feet can reach the pedals." And blah, 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 da, 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 da. And John Ritzel looked down, and he said, why don't you just lower the seat? And that's brilliant. But that's what common sense is. You know, my son, I've always told him and my daughter, I said, if you get so flustered when you're doing something, take a breath and stand back. Then go back in. And that's where common sense comes in. Because you can see the totality of what you're about and what you're doing. But again, it was a simpler time. It's, you know, I'm probably going to, it's like I'm giving you a glimpse of history, but, you know, growing up too, you know, we were allowed to do things. Well, actually, we were encouraged to do things. On a Saturday, if you were indoors, oh, that was anathema. There's no way a child would stay indoors on a Saturday. It's get out of here. Go on, get out. That's pretty much the parenting method of the time. Go on, get out of here. Keep quiet. Get it. So we'd go out and a bunch of kids would get together, and there was no parental involvement. There was no parental oversight. You know, you bump into a kid from Colony Street and somebody else from here, and for some reason, you decide to build a treehouse. So you find some wood and you slap it together and you fall out of the tree, and somebody invariably breaks their arm or at least their wrist. And that was a part of growing up then. There was, you know, making soapbox racers. This old piece of wood, and somebody had grabbed some wheels off their little sister's baby carriage. We'd be building these soapbox racers that race down the hill. And we built them horribly. Again, we're 10, 11 years old. We don't know what we're doing. So these things are breaking apart, and we're flying off them. And then somebody had the brilliant idea of, hey, let me go get my father's lighter fluid. So he comes back with a can of lighter fluid, soaks the back of the soapbox racers, and just before you race down the hill, you throw a match on it. Now it looks like you got a jet engine. I swear today the authorities would take us away from our parents. I mean, there was after one storm, I remember there was a rowboat washed up on shore, old big wooden scow, about 15, 16 feet long. And we figured out a way to, again, we're kids. The oldest was probably about 11, 12 years old. We figured out how to get it up into my backyard. So we did it the Egyptian way. We put rollers underneath and found some pipes, some old steam pipes, and put it under there and kept on rolling it, and then ran around to the front, put another one in. Again, there's no parental involvement in this at all. So our parents were at work. You know, we were just, you know, running around, you know, trying to stay out of trouble or get into trouble and make sure nobody found out about it. But so we finally got it up into my backyard, and all that spring, you know, little by little, we patched it up and rebuilt it. And, you know, like that fellow John Ritzel would come by and say, well, kids, here's what you need to do this. You need some caulking. You know, well, that's board, you know, we got to do this. Got to put the oar locks in. You got to do it. And so we learned. We just did it because we wanted to do it. Well, come summer, we put it in the water, and here we are again, a rowboat full of kids. There had to be 8, 9 of us in there. And we row it out. We're half a mile out to sea. And so somebody had the bright idea, let's play king of the boat. And so now we're throwing each other off the side of the boat. Half a mile out to sea, and somebody spots our mothers on the shore. Not all of them, like 3 or 4 of them, mine certainly, you know, with dish towels waving back and forth, screaming to come. We pretended we couldn't hear them. But that's the kind of thing we did for fun. And we all got back safely and, you know, got scolded soundly. But we had an adventure. And even when we go off on our bikes, you know, we'd be going off, and again, we're 5, 6 miles from home. We don't have a cell phone. Even when we had a cell phone, we don't know our home number. We have no idea what it is. Changing your bicycle brakes. Fix it. You don't have anybody to call. You got to fix it yourself because you have to be home before the streetlights go on. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. I think that was a universal. Was that here? In Nebraska, same thing? Yeah. If those streetlights go on and you're not home, you're oh, you're in for really big trouble. So what do? You figure out ways to fix that chain, or you carry the bike home, or you push the bike home. You certainly don't leave it and buy another one at Walmart the next day. That didn't happen. Most of us built our own bicycles because it was fun. But what we were doing, and we didn't realize it, is we were problem solving. We thought we were playing, but at a young age, we were solving problems. Climbing trees, fixing bicycles, monkeying around with rowboats or whatever else was at hand. But we got very astute at doing things and figuring it out. So that by the time we got to be adults, it was a piece of cake. Yeah, I can do that. I know how to do that. I mean, consequently, I when I was 14, I decided I wanted to learn how to build a house and everything in it. So I did. And that's what kept me alive after college. I mean, I had a degree in English. That's great. So I was a real well-read carpenter. I was the only carpenter who could quote and understand Shakespeare. But both of them have kept me in good stead. But what happened? See, but now, obviously now, and you know, my children in their early and mid-20s, that's kind of gone by the wayside in our society, and it's my fault. I have to own up to it. I want to apologize for it because most of you, when you were young, you weren't allowed to go outside by yourselves and run around, and parents hovered over the Little League games and, you know, made sure that you were at tap dance lessons on time and all that, and you really weren't allowed to go out and do a lot of things by yourself. But again, it's my fault because, like I said, I was a carpenter, and I was at Woodstock. I helped build the stage at Woodstock. And if I had any idea how much damage that Woodstock generation was going to cause to our society and civilization, I would have rigged the stage to fall apart. I would have made sure that there was no Woodstock Festival. And the perfect example of that whole era is, you're familiar with the Beatles? Everybody, yeah, okay. They had a song, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the lyrics of which are, picture yourself in a boat down the river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. And basically they're saying, just float down the river, man, a little chillax and, you know, do drugs and watch the, you know, the images in the sky. It'd just be so cool. Oh, man, because you're going to do drugs and float down the river in a boat. Even back then, my question was, who built the boat? Somebody had to get up in the morning with skills and a passion to do things the right way for your keister to float down the river doing drugs. And it's the same thing today. We are still living on the infrastructure built by our parents and grandparents. You know, we get up every morning, turn on the tap, hot water comes out, cold water comes out. You know, the stove works, there's food in the refrigerator. It doesn't just happen. There's a reason. It's because somebody grew up with the Judeo-Christian ethic of being responsible for yourself and putting your hand to something useful. And Woodstock undermined all that. You know, we're told, oh, education isn't important. You know, just do, I mean, every movie you see celebrates, it's either the use of drugs or the people who do drugs. And before the 1960s, we were a society that honored success. And now we're a society that honors failure and mediocrity. In some way, we have to shake that off. Because there's no phrase, dance with the one who brought you. In other words, go home with the person who took you to the dance. Don't change partners mid-dance. It's just not the right thing to do. It's the same thing with your ethic. to answer the one who brought you. What brought you to this point was the Judeo-Christian ethic of taking care of each other, of being responsible, of getting up in the morning, putting your hand to something useful. And once again, I apologize because I was at Woodstock, and once again, I would have rigged that stage if I had known what was going to happen. Because in the media, the legal system, the educational system, it's a different way of thinking than was prevalent then that actually built civilization. So now, we're actually a little bit swimming upstream, but if we get back to those core values, the core values of basically, looking out for each other, of serving each other, of service, of doing the things we do to benefit each other. That's why, with that ethic, the Judeo-Christian ethic, it's always about service, about other people. That's why you never see a Buddhist hospital, because Buddhism is all about looking inward, and Hinduism is all about your faith. The Judeo-Christian ethic is taking care of each other, looking out for each other, being of service to each other. So, as a matter of fact, it's one of the funny things about Woodstock that I think it's probably worth mentioning is that, again, I'm not sure how familiar you are with that whole era, but that was the big deal era, big deal of the era, the Woodstock Festival. It was the highway going to that area was bumper-to-bumper traffic for 75 miles in both directions. People actually had to get out of their cars and spend the night there on the freeway. That's how many people were going to this thing. But it was all about anti-government, down with the government, down with the army, the army's no good, the military's no good. And then, once again, I said, I worked there. I was also a tractor driver. And it started to rain. And after it started to rain, everything turned to mud. And people were slipping and sliding and cutting their feet and getting injured. And at one point, I thought there was going to be a riot. Because there was no food, there was no porta potties, there was no medical care. And all of a sudden I heard, whoa, 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 whoa. And it looked, and here's the National Guard helicopters coming in with medical care, porta potties, food. And I know, I was there, and I was the one in the tractor bringing those supplies to where they needed to be. And the funny thing is that, I thought, if it weren't for the National Guard, Woodstock would have been another Donner Party. There were hippies eating each other. So, when Senator Clinton, Hillary Clinton, when she was a senator in New York, she wanted to build a statue to the Woodstock Festival because this was the real big deal moment in that generation's lives. And my suggestion was, sure, build a statue, but it should be of a National Guardsman feeding a crying hippie. Or a saltine or something. There you go, kid. Take it easy. Don't cry now. Don't cry. But, like I said, when we have the society now that we honor failure and mediocrity instead of success. Everyone's seen The Godfather, right? Great movie. Oh, it's a terrific movie. So beautifully done and acted and written. But they're honoring failure. These are people who are murderers. They're killers. They don't do any good for society, but yet we make movies honoring them. Same thing with Breaking Bad. Wonderfully done. But are these really the people you want in your living room? No. So why are we honoring them? Say, man, that's cool. No, well, it's not. It's cool if you're one of the actors making a ton of dough. But, for society's purposes, we need to get back to, honoring success. The standard was here. That's what built us. That's what brought us to this dance. The standard was here. Like, for example, here's a question, and it's an 8th grade public school question. Name 5 states that border the Ohio River. I couldn't answer it. That was off an 8th grade public school test from 1912. I mean, that's wow, 5 states. Well, one of them must be Ohio, because it's called the Ohio River. I got that one, and only because I knew the area, because I used to hunt down there. It was Pennsylvania, because that's where the head of the Ohio River starts. That's about all I could do. But that means the standard was here, and we've lowered the standard to accommodate. Well, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Again, this whole concept came out of the 60s. At one time, it was, you had to prove yourself. If you went to school, public school, I went to a parochial school, let's tell you, here's where you're going to reach. There's no excuses. This is where you're getting to. And we're not going to go down here because we're afraid we're going to hurt your feelings. They didn't care about your feelings. Your job was to be brilliant. Your job was to work hard. And when you went out for Little League then, again, I grew up at a different time, back just after the Civil War, late 1800s. Our computers ran on steam. We had a little coal we had to shovel into a boiler. But when you went out for a Little League team, for instance, and if you were no good, the coach would say, "Wow, you stink. You should go find something else to do." Okay, thanks, coach. There was no, well, let's give you a uniform and we'll get you to play. No. If you wanted to play baseball, you had to be good. Again, the standard was here. They're not going to lower the standard. And from what I've been told and what I see, around the country, now you just show up. And they give you a uniform, and they give you a glove, and you're guaranteed play, and you're going to get a trophy. A trophy for what? For showing up? You get a trophy? Again, we've lowered the standard to the point where nothing is special anymore. This whole concept of kindergarten graduations, caps and gowns. Who came up with that? These kids that don't know. They're 5 years old, and they got caps and gowns. And what, are you afraid Granny is going to die before she gets to see the kid? Yeah, and then you go through the same thing in grammar school graduation, and then high school graduation. So by the time you get to college, you've had it with graduations already. Just mail me the thing. But again, it was a different time. But that's what brought us to the dance. We had the advantage as children because we didn't make the Little League team, or because we weren't accepted, into a club because we just weren't good enough. It gave us an opportunity to handle an emotional crisis at 8, 9, 10 years old. We had to figure it out. Sure, you're going to feel bad. But you're not the first one. You're not going to be the last one. You figure out something. Maybe you're a better cello player than a baseball player. Maybe you want to fly kites. Maybe you want to learn magic tricks. But there's always something out there. But now we honor mediocrity. I think it's the trophy industry that came up with this idea. Because everybody's getting a trophy. A trophy, some kind of an award or a plaque. But again, the standard used to be there. Even a job I had was, a carpenter. Actually, there was a CEO of a company told me this story before I tell you the carpenter story. And I said, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking about this and that. And he said he just hired a kid, pretty much out of college, and then after 3 days fired him. So what'd you fire him for? He said, well, he wanted a corner office, wanted to be the vice president, thought he, knew it all, wouldn't listen to anybody else, and so I fired him. And then on the fourth day, the kid came back with his mother. And his mother told the CEO of this big company, you have to apologize to my son because you hurt his self-esteem. And I hear variations of that all over the country. By the time you're early 20s, you should be taking care of yourself. You shouldn't have your mother, calling up the president of the university and saying there's too much mayonnaise in the tuna salad. If you don't like the tuna salad, you go tell somebody. You don't go home and tell mom and dad. Mom and dad's done their job. But again, it's just a different time. Like I was saying, when I thought I was a carpenter, I went up to a building site, needed a job. I had different jobs, deckhand on a ship and things like that. And so I walked up to a building site and I said to this big Italian guy, I said, you need another carpenter? He looks down at me and goes, you think you're a carpenter? I said, well, yeah, I got tools. Of course, yeah. He said, all right, carpenter, come on, I'll give you a job. Oh, man, I was thrilled. So my job was to move a stack of 2x12s. These are joists. This is what holds your ceiling up and the roof. And, they're about this wide, this thick, and maybe 12 feet long, 10, 12 feet long. But there was a pile, the length of that wall and half as high, in the back of this house, this apartment building that they were building. And he said, move this to there. I said, what? There, move. Okay, now it's like mid-December. This is New England, and it gets cold. And so that was my job, moving piece by piece, pieces of wood from there to there. Now, after a couple of weeks, pile was starting to get low. I thought, okay, I'm getting there. And a delivery truck comes in, and I see the delivery guy talking to the boss, and the boss points over there, and the truck comes, dumps all the wood just where I would move the wood from. I think, what the? Why just have him dump it over? And then I realized he wants to see what I'm made of. He wants to see if I can take it. So for the next month, 2, that's all it was. Now, this is, again, you have snow, rain, mud, freezing temperatures, and I'm outside moving this pile of wood from there to there. And I just was too stubborn. I don't know what it was, but I said, no, they're not going to break me. This is what I got to do. This is what I got. Because also I needed the money. There was a lot of money trees in the Ratzenberger's backyard. So I finally did it. So come mid-March sometime, it's all right, I'm going to show you how to hold a hammer. Now, I thought I knew how to hold a hammer, but I didn't. He showed me how to hold a hammer so I could swing that hammer all day long without my wrist getting tired, without my arm getting tired. I can still do it to this day. And then the thing was, I was watching the master carpenters. They're driving a nail in 3 whacks. They go bump, bump, bam, bump, bump, bam. And that was the beat, the music of a carpenter. And I wanted to get to that. Sometimes you bend a nail, and sometimes it's 4 hits or 6 hits. But I wanted to get, to me it was beautiful. Bump, bump, bam. But none of the other carpenters would talk to me. Even though I'm pretty much putting in the floors and throwing up some 2x4s and making a wall. And I go down and sit with them for lunch. And they'd all get up and walk away. What's going on? Anyway, so okay. I like I said, needed a job. And that went on for the beginning of summer. So now here's mid-June. And I'm up on the joists. I'm standing on the roofing joist. That's the pieces that go to make the roof shaped like this. You see it from the side, you can see right through because there's not plywood on it yet. So I'm standing on the joists, and they're handing up sheets of plywood that are 4 feet wide, 8 feet long. They're handing it up to me, and I'm handing it down to the guy on the top floor, and he's piling them up because we're going to cover the roof. So they hand them up to me, and I look down, the guy's gone. Now, it's windy that day. And so here I am, and I think, oh, my God, if I catch the wind the wrong way, I can't let the sheet of plywood go because it's going to kill somebody. And if I hang on to it, I'm going to be Mary Poppins with a tube belt. So I put it, I dropped it down on the floor, and I'm looking around, and this guy over here, he hands me up another sheet, and I go, well, and I see him leave. And I'm, again, doing the same thing, and all of a sudden I hear, and I look down, and two of the carpenters, Corky and Dana, are nailing my shoes to the joists. They'd come up underneath me, and like a machine gun going, pop, 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 and nailing the edges of my boots to the roofing joists. They finished doing that, and then they double, triple, quadruple knotted my boots, started laughing, and took off for lunch. And I'm standing there, and everybody's going. I see them getting in their cars or waving. See that. And to this day, and I was thinking about this as I, cut myself out of my bootlaces and spent the rest of the lunchtime prying the nails out of my boots so I could use them. To this day, it's one of the happiest days of my life because I knew I was accepted. And that's the day I became a carpenter. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered. They were telling me, welcome to the gang, John. You've worked hard and you've earned it. So that was my trophy. That was my reward. And I expected that every job I've done, every industry I've ever been in. You start somewhere, you figure it out. Same thing with acting. I lived in an abandoned building for 2 years in London, trying to be an actor. But what kept me alive was my carpentry skills. So I tell my kids, whatever your passion is, go for it, but always have a skill that no one can ever take away from you, that you own. Because then you can get a job anywhere in the world, anytime you want. Whether it's, computer programming or, like I said, carpentry, plumbing. My son just became a plumber, by the way. Not that I'm trying to talk you guys out of college, but he got a degree in English like his dad, and he's happy as a clam, making good money. But again, he'd probably go back in academics, but he wanted to get some kind of skill. So if you're lucky enough in your careers or your future, at some point, someday, someone will nail your shoes to the joists. So good luck, and thank you again for having me.